I just want to thank God for this opportunity. I'm a Christian, but I don't pretend to be so religiously arrogant that I assume everyone is a Christian. If you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're Buddhist, even if you're agnostic or atheist, you have that right as well. I just hope that we can agree in this really profound year of 2020 that we are all part of the human family, part of the human race. I certainly want to thank New Hampshire Humanities, Mr. Anthony Poore, Ms. Donna Bailey, the entire team, the entire staff that has made this event possible. It's an honor to be one of your speakers. My name is Kevin Powell. I'm a writer and civil rights activist, human rights activist, and just someone who cares deeply about the subject matters, hope and resilience. I'm just going to be honest with you all. 2020, even without COVID, has been one of the most challenging years of my entire life. There's been divorce, there's been bankruptcy. There's been people that I know who got the COVID-19 virus, who died, some who survived. I even have a friend tragically who just recently committed suicide. It's been a difficult year around hope and resilience, having hope, having resilience. But I'm gonna tell y'all what has sustained me this year is what we call the humanities, which is what the New Hampshire Humanities represents. I'm thankful that I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I have the ability to put things on paper because that saved me. I've written more in 2020 than I have in any year since the 1990s when I was a very young writer in New York City, where I'm based, just starting out. What has sustained me in terms of the humanities, every single day, I cannot imagine not having music in some form in my life. So much so that I literally find myself seeking out music online, things that I haven't listened to in years, sharing it with other people on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. What has sustained me is all forms of art. I don't care if it's the visual art that's on my walls, art that I look for online, visual arts online, dance, all of it, theater, all of it, movies, all of it, because we need art, especially in these times. Just like people needed art during the Great Depression, just like people needed art during the Civil Rights Movement. We need art because art is not just a reflection of who we are and where we are. Art also tells us where we can go. Art gives us hope, gives us resilience. And art has been a part of my life ever since I was a little child. I was born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey, the son of a single mother who has a grade school education, but she's the smartest woman, smartest person I've ever met. I had never really knew my father. I only saw him 2 or 3 times from the time I was born until I was 8 years old. And then he disowned me, told my mother she had lied to him and that I was not his son. So I had every reason from the time I was a little child not to have hope and not to be resilient. But my mother, with her grade school education, who was the smartest person I ever met, taught me from the time I was able to have any kind of thoughts, 3 years old, 4 years old, that the humanities, art, learning, the culture of learning had to be as important to me as breathing. And so I'm a writer, an artist because of my mother. When I was a child, I drew first. I love the visual arts, which is why my home, my space is all these colors, purple on one side, yellow on the other. It's one of the reasons why I do have art on my walls. But when my mother took me to the library when I was 8 years old, I fell in love with books in a very different kind of way. I fell in love with reading in a very different kind of way. And I spent the next 3 years or so going back and forth to the library with my mother. My mother never checked out a book, but she let me check out every book possible. My mother read the newspaper. She stayed up on what was going on in the world, news. But my imagination, what is humanities? Your imagination running wild. What is hope? Your imagination running wild. What is resilience? Your imagination running wild. And we had no choice, my mother and I, but to have hope and to be resilient because I was raised in poverty. And we know that poverty is a form of violence. I was raised on welfare and food stamps and government cheese and the kind of poverty I wouldn't wish on anyone. We were so poor I thought something was wrong with my friends' TV sets when I'd go to their homes every now and then, and they had a color TV because we had a black and white TV. We were so poor. I had one pair of shoes and one pair of sneakers when I was growing up until my teenage years. And if I ran holes into my shoes or sneakers, which often happened because I was one of those boys out there playing all the time, biking and skateboarding and just running holes into my shoes and sneakers, there was no new shoes or sneakers. You had to put cardboard or newspaper at the bottom of your shoes or sneakers to cover up the holes, even in the wintertime. And we were so poor. My mother would sometimes say, I don't know if we're going to make it. I don't know if you're going to make it. But what kept us going was hope and resilience and faith that there was something better for us out there in this world. What kept us going for me was education, a love of learning, falling in love with every form of the humanities. And what kept us going was also hearing the stories of my ancestors, people who had come from the South, people who had come from different parts of the world, the Caribbean, Latin America, Europe, with nothing, just like my mother and her two sisters had migrated from South Carolina up to the North with nothing. And so when we talk about hope and resilience, I want y'all to think about it in a personal sense. What are the stories of your own life, of the people in your family, no matter where they come from in America, on the planet, where in spite of everything, they got through? This is 2020 with our country, a very profound year of a loss of hope. People are very, very, very sad and frustrated and scared. When I think about my young friend who just committed suicide, this young man had everything going for him. He had a father and a mother. He had an amazing family. He was a graduate of one of the elite film schools in this country, master's program, had just gotten a fellowship to HBO. But because of all the stuff that's happening in the country, all the hatred, the division, the violence, the ignorance, George Floyd being kneed to death on camera, Breonna Taylor being shot in her own home, I understand, sadly, why some people give up hope. I understand why some people will do anything to numb the pain. But what I'm saying to you all out there is that we can't give up. There've been times I've wanted to give up this year. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. I've been through some major upheavals. You try going through a divorce and bankruptcy in the middle of the biggest global pandemic in 100 years. And think about how you would feel. But I had to find inside of me something that one of my heroes, Bobby Kennedy, talked about. You gotta represent tiny ripples of hope. And we gotta find victory and joy in small acts of kindness and compassion. I would not be here right now talking to you all if it wasn't for the kindness and compassion and empathy of people, some that I know and some complete strangers in this year 2020, who have not only given me hope by how they've related to me, but they don't even realize how they filled up my tank, my gas tank of resilience, so that I can keep going forward. So we can't give up. We got to keep going. What we got to do is practice love, love, love. Love is the revolution. That means love of self, love of self. That means love of other people. That means love is an action. It means that even when you sometimes don't feel like getting out of bed, when you sometimes don't feel like working, when you sometimes don't feel like doing anything because it's so overwhelming, everything that we're dealing with, including this upcoming election, we still got to do it. Because those who came, my mother did it. Because my late grandmother did it, who could not read and write. Because everyone who came before me in my history did it. I'm saying if we can survive the Holocaust, slavery, segregation, being hung from trees, If we can survive previous pandemics and mass disease, if we can survive other forms of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ageism, all the ugliness out there, then we can survive this. But it's really going to take us coming together in the name of the humanities, because what is humanities? It's human beings figuring out how to work together, how to be together, how to love each other. That's what keeps me going, because I really do love all people. That's where the hope and resilience comes from for me, from we, the people.